Hey, it's Debbie Potts. Do you ever wonder why? How does this work? Why does this happen? What does this mean? Well, stay tuned in each week as I take a deeper dive into hot topics in our community. So if you want to know the why, listen in each week. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and have you used a CGM before? CGM is continuous glucose monitor, and there's different options out there. Ideally, you can get it from your doctor, but they seem to just want to wait until you're type 2 diabetic and not be preventative. I would like us to take ownership of our health and make choices now to prevent having high, low glucose readings and optimize your health from the inside out by testing and not guessing. And that includes a CGM that goes on for 14 days, and you can order one via NutriSense. And a CGM is giving you glucose updates with a small device in the back of your arm 24/7. Totally easy. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, how to apply this CGM. First time, you're kind of scared, but it doesn't hurt. But it gives you real-time glucose readings. Glucose response to meals. You'll learn about what foods are reactive to you, and that could be a healthy food that you think is great, but it could raise your glucose. Simple things as stevia, for me, raise my glucose. Chewing gum, raise my glucose. Stress, when I'm driving a car and there's traffic, raises my glucose. Every stress response is a glucose response. So learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to pick right foods for you, unless you can, do other lab testing and figure out vibrant wellness food zoomers, but it's kind of expensive for people. So if you can wear a CGM, it's a great way to learn about stress, food, exercise, stacking movement with your nutrition. Figure out how to balance your blood sugar. So we want to learn more about how to exercise and eat or not eat. And morning cortisol, does it raise your glucose? If there's hidden stressors at nighttime, does your glucose go up higher while you're sleeping? So it gives us lots of clues that we can put in our investigation when we are working on your personalized fueling, training, and performance program to improve fat loss, performance, and longevity. So head to NutriSense website, nutrisense.io, how it works. You can learn more about your habits, your routines, your relationship to food, a little bit more. Great app to use, and it can sync on to different programs, so you can put it all together. So if you want to get started with your journey in NutriSense, I suggest this to all my clients. Use at least 30 days. So you can do a 30-day, 90-day, different programs, but you can pick which one you want. You get the sensor in the mail, put it on, lasts for 14 days, sync it to the app, and get your readings on there. And then if you're doing my VIP coaching program, I'm working with you to correlate this data together. So begin your health optimization journey with NutriSense, and you can save on your order with our code, as usual, Low Carb Athlete. So no carbs is not our goal, it's carb timing, and using NutriSense, you can help figure out your nutrient-dense whole food plan and when to adjust your macros based on your exercise intensity, duration, based on your life stressors, and learn more. So it's nice to have this data. So test and not guess with NutriSense. Let me know how you like it. Okay, today I want to dive into what is metabolic flexibility. We hear this word, but sometimes you might not fully understand what does it mean and what is it when you are inflexible, metabolically inflexible. Let's catch up on some topics here, definitions and rabbit holes that we can go down. So metabolic flexibility is a concept, or is it a catchy term? This is an article I received as a PNOE metabolic testing expert, we get access to their articles they write. And so I thought I'd go into this and then go into Dr. Ben Bickman and some other people I follow on their definition of metabolic flexibility. So in this article, I'll go through, and you can find it on debbiepotts.net. Are you metabolically flexible or inflexible? So key points: the body's ability to rapidly and efficiently switch between oxidations on different energy substrates, namely fat and carbohydrates, depending on their availability, is known as metabolic flexibility. Long-term caloric excess and ectopic fat accumulation are central mechanisms of impaired metabolic flexibility. Insulin resistance is the link among the cluster of metabolic disturbances that are all characterized by impaired metabolic flexibility. Mitochondrial dysfunction is a principal component of impaired metabolic flexibility. Regular exercise and a healthy low-calorie diet can improve metabolic flexibility. I wouldn't say the word low-calorie. I'm not a big fan of saying, calories in, calories out, but working on the macros and prioritizing protein and healthy fats and your strategic timing of your carbohydrates that are from nature, not man-made. And then, of course, the right type of exercise and when. Okay, back to the article. RER, respiratory exchange ratio, that we test when I do metabolic testing on PNOE. If you're in North San Diego, you can come see me, or you can come visit me. So the RER fluctuations measured through the breath analysis that we do in the test is alternating between fasted and fed states can be used as an index of metabolic flexibility. So measuring your breath, oxygen in and the carbon dioxide out, that ratio is your RER, respiratory exchange ratio. Human physiology has evolved during dramatic fluctuations in the energy supply and demand. Taking these challenges enabled the human body to manage energy metabolism for optimal substrate storage and utilization. So I won't read all of this article, but you can go into my website blog page, read the whole article. But specifically, metabolic flexibility, it's our body's ability to switch from high levels of fat oxidation during a fasted state to increased carbohydrate utilization during feeding states. The greater our ability to burn the food we consume instead of storing it, the more metabolically flexible we are. Humans constantly cycle between fasting and postprandial, post-meal conditions, and vice versa. The primary purpose of this substrate shift is to move from a catabolic, which is the metabolic process of breaking down fuels for energy production, as well as in the muscles, to anabolic, the metabolic process synthesizing molecules as glycogen and triglycerides for energy storage, in which this energy can be effectively stored in skeletal muscle, fat, and liver tissues. So the article continues to say that metabolic flexibility is not an on-off phenomenon. It involves constant, tightly regulated adaptive responses of human metabolism to maintain energy homeostasis by matching fuel availability and demand to various conditions such as periodic fasting, varying meal composition, physical activity, and environmental fluctuations. Nowadays, when the food supply overflows and there's tons of calorie-dense processed foods combined with low levels of physical activity, metabolic flexibility is directly obstructed. So they go on to talk about it more in the article below. Hey, before you leave, my fellow endurance athletes, just a reminder, if you like what you listened to today, please help me out. Share this episode with your community of fellow aging athletes. Also, you can head to debbiepotts.net to set up a free discovery call with me to learn about my personalized coaching programs. If you are struggling to get the desired results, even though you're doing all the so-called right things you hear about out there in our community, you may just need to adjust your workout and test and not guess with functional lab testing, nutritional therapy assessment, and get a personalized program to learn how to best fuel, train, and perform for the unique you to improve the aging process and work on training your future self now. So head to debbiepotts.net and let's talk more. All right. So let's go to what Dr. Ben Bikman says about metabolic flexibility and insulin resistance. So we'll go back into metabolic testing and how we can measure this, but metabolic flexibility and insulin resistance I want to go into. So Dr. Ben Bikman talks about the metabolic flexibility, as I said, is the ability of the body to efficiently switch between different fuel sources, mainly glucose, carbohydrates, and fatty acids from our fats, based on the body's energy demands and availability of nutrients. In other words, a metabolically flexible individual can effectively use both fuels, glucose and fats, for energy depending on the circumstances. So we've got glucose utilization. When glucose is available, such as after consuming carbohydrates, a metabolically flexible individual can effectively take up and use glucose for energy. This is important to maintain stable blood sugar levels and to provide energy to the cells, especially those that rely on glucose as their primary fuel source, as certain parts of the brain, as well as ketones are used for the brain, right? So fat utilization, on the other hand, when glucose availability is low, such as during fasting or low carb intake, a metabolically flexible individual can switch to using stored fat as a source of energy. This involves breaking down stored fats, triglycerides into fatty acids, which can be utilized by various tissues and organs. Insulin sensitivity. Now, metabolic flexibility is linked closely to insulin sensitivity because insulin sensitivity refers to how responsive the cells are to the effects of insulin. Insulin is a hormone that regulates glucose uptake by the cells. So when the cells are insulin sensitive, they are better able to take glucose from the bloodstream, reducing the risk of high blood sugar levels. So they uptake it into the muscle cells. Now, this is what we're going to talk more about for us females that are in our mid part of our life, in that transition phase, that we become more insulin insensitive. And that's why it's so important to time your carbohydrate intake in and around workouts that are more glycogen dependent. So more HIIT training, short intensity interval training, which are the 10 to 30 seconds all out, and then a long recovery, and then do it again, as well as weightlifting, heavy weights. So we want to make sure we are eating those carbs to fuel our workout, strategic carbohydrate timing we talk about, and then limiting your carbohydrates the rest of the day, or timing it, another topic, but in your evening meal, 3 hours before bed. And then if you do that, you're working out first thing in the morning and you are having some glycogen stores topped off. Okay, let me continue. Benefits of metabolic flexibility associated with metabolic health. And this is what I want to go into, because all these articles we talk about and hear about on other podcasts and social media, internet, it's about improving metabolic health. So when we take all this information, and this podcast is directed to the fit and healthy, active individual. So if you are an endurance athlete trying to do the intermittent fasting, 16 hours or more, if you're trying to do more of the typical keto of 50 grams total a day and doing very strict carnivore of 0 carbs, that might backfire for you, because the information out there is based on people that are trying to improve their metabolic health. So if you are fit and active, you may need to tweak these guidelines and make them beneficial for you instead of causing a source of stress that becomes a chronic stressor. Okay, so we have to watch that because exercise in itself is already a stressor. And if we're doing a lot of exercise as a triathlete, I'm working out in the morning and then I'm going swimming at lunchtime, then I have to lift weights at night or go for a walk. I'm active. So I have to make sure I'm eating enough calories and timing them in and around the workout to help for that muscle repair and rebuild process, but also for fueling next time I do an anaerobic workout. Different than if I'm just doing a low zone 1-2 workout. Okay, so I'm trying to tie this all together because the information is not for you endurance athletes, just side note. So the benefits of metabolic flexibility, as I said, it improves metabolic health. So this allows the body to adapt in different situations, such as variations in food availability and energy demands. It also plays a role in preventing insulin resistance, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. People with good metabolic flexibility are often equipped to maintain stable energy levels and body weight. Also, factors that affect metabolic flexibility that can influence being inflexible, then what you eat, so your diet, physical activity, how you exercise, genetics, and your overall metabolic health. Regular exercise, a balanced diet that includes both, this is an article, so both carbohydrates and healthy fats. I don't like saying carbohydrates, I like saying nutrient-dense whole foods that fuel your body and strategic carb timing of nature's carbohydrates. So the word carbohydrates gets really blown out of proportion that it means not all carbs are evil. It's what people eat. So not having packaged processed foods that have a barcode and a huge ingredient list on the label. When we say carbohydrates, nature's carbohydrates, we're talking about blackberries, blueberries, strawberries. They're in season right now as it's summertime when I record this. And then fall, you might have more root vegetables and fall vegetables. So you want to eat seasonally. So those are your carbohydrates, not the stuff in the aisles of the grocery store. So we want to shop the outside of the aisles around the meat section and the produce section and really choose seasonally ancestral health. Okay, so I just hate when they say that certain words here. Maintaining healthy body composition is important to have better metabolic flexibility. So that's kind of what we've been talking a lot about, or I will be talking a lot about because I've been writing all these articles as I study Dr. Stacy Sims' information and listen to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, that it is about prioritizing protein and lifting heavy weights and doing sprint intervals. Less is more on the chronic cardio, high volume endurance exercise we typically do as we are endurance athletes. But as we get older, we don't need to do that much volume. We already know how to do it as females, especially. So the body composition changes based on your macros, your protein intake with healthy fats. So if you are eating more an animal-based diet without choosing the kind of processed meat that is zero fat, you want to have just grass-fed meat that has the healthy fats and protein with it. As you listen to Dr. Ben Bickman, I was listening to his interviews on podcasts that traditionally an animal-based diet has a lot of fatty meat. It's when the industry, we got to be fat phobic, started to make meat that is zero fat, low fat. So you want to avoid that. And ideally grass-fed, wild-caught, all that stuff. So healthy fats and protein. But the maintaining the body composition isn't just what you eat. You need to actually lift heavy weights. Okay, so we'll go into that in another episode because I think people think they just changed what they eat. That doesn't necessarily change your body composition and make you leaner and stronger. You have to do the work. And it doesn't come in a pill. I can't just take a supplement to help balance my blood sugar. I need to actually lift heavy weights. So Dr. Ben Bickman is one that you should follow if you haven't already and read his book. But I love his information and how he explains everything. So he focuses on the importance of metabolic flexibility as a marker of metabolic health and talking about not fearing fat, focus on prioritizing your protein and getting your fruits and probably, the vegetables. We need to be careful. They're not toxic plant toxins in them, but making more of the root vegetables for us athletes are not bad to have sweet potatoes and potatoes if you don't have a lot of issues with that. But Dr. Ben Bickman's info is great. So let's go into what insulin resistance is and how can you measure it and how does that cause fat weight gain. So insulin resistance is a metabolic condition in which the body's cells become less responsive to the effects of insulin, a hormone produced by the pancreas. Insulin plays a crucial role in regulating blood sugar levels and facilitating the uptake of glucose, sugar, from the bloodstream into the cells, where it is used for energy. When cells become resistant to the effects of insulin, they don't respond as effectively to the hormone signals. This leads to several physiological changes that we contribute to weight gain in the form of fat accumulation. So here's how it happens. We have elevated blood sugar levels. So with insulin resistance, cells are less efficient in taking up glucose from the bloodstream. As a result, blood sugar levels remain elevated. To control high blood sugar, the body produces more insulin. Remember, more is not better. The Goldilocks effect for everything. Elevated insulin levels can promote the storage of excess glucose as fat in adipose tissue. And then we have increased fat storage. Insulin plays a role in the fat metabolism. So when insulin resistance is present, the body's ability to break down stored fat and use it for energy can be impaired. Instead, the body favors fat storage, especially in the abdominal area. Disrupted appetite regulation can result from insulin resistance as it disrupts the signals that regulate appetite and satiety. So if you heard of leptin and ghrelin, I always think of gremlins, and they make growling, make you hungry. So feeling satiated and full might be an issue for you. You might want to look at your hormone balance. And that's why we want to choose more of a good, healthy protein and fat diet if you are eating too many carbohydrates or, as we'll go into, too much stress in your life. Because chronic stress will raise blood sugar. And if you do that over and over again, you can get insulin resistance from not what you eat, but how you live your life. Your external stressors accumulate and your internal stressors start to build up because of chronic stress. The whole domino effect of internal stressors will accumulate. This is what happened to me. And I shared in my book, Life is Not a Race. So also we have the promotion of lipogenesis. Insulin resistance can lead to increased conversion of glucose into fatty acids in the liver in a process known as lipogenesis. These fatty acids are then transported and stored as fat in various tissues. Then we have inflammation and hormonal imbalances. Insulin resistance associated with the chronic, not a good word, chronic, low-grade inflammation and hormonal imbalances. These factors can contribute to metabolic dysfunction, including promotion of fat storage. And then lipolysis is a process by which fat is broken down to release fatty acids for energy. Insulin resistance can hinder this process, making it more difficult for the body to use stored fat as an energy source. Not so good. Effect on the fat cells. Insulin resistance can affect adipocytes, which are fat cells, directly, causing them to be larger and promoting release of the inflammatory substances. Larger fat cells can lead to increased fat storage. And then we have metabolic syndrome. Insulin resistance is a component of metabolic syndrome, which is a cluster of conditions that include high blood pressure, high blood sugar, excess abdominal fat, abnormal cholesterol levels. Metabolic syndrome can further contribute weight gain and other health issues. So we want to look at the big picture. So more on insulin resistance in this article about obesity and physical activity. But for you, the athlete, I think we want to look at more sleep, stress, hormonal imbalances. So if you look at genetics, of course, can play a role in your susceptibility of insulin resistance. And age, as I said, females, as our hormones get lower, we can be more prone to insulin resistance. So that's why we have to really work on our nutrient timing in and around our workouts. Sleep disturbances, poor sleep quality, poor sleep hygiene routine, insufficient quality of sleep can negatively affect insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. So stress, of course, is chronic stress can lead to abnormal hormonal levels, so imbalances in your hormones, and inflammation that will affect insulin sensitivity and inactivity. You may work out, but right now I'm sitting and I need to stand again. But prolonged periods of sitting and sedentary lifestyle can contribute to insulin resistance. And I think this is where we athletes think we are invincible because I worked out this morning, but then I'm sitting on my butt all day long. So that's where I talk about movement breaks and movement snack breaks and exercise snack breaks throughout the day. Little 10 jump squats, air squats, do something throughout the day. Make sure you set your timer up every hour and move, but that's a big thing. And then we've got inflammation. Now, chronic low-grade inflammation in the body can disrupt insulin signaling and promote insulin resistance. And then there's medications and gut health. So imbalances in the gut bacteria of the microbiome might influence insulin sensitivity. And this is really interesting because I am doing coaching for athletes, but I do functional lab testing and investigate all of what's going on with their signs and symptoms in my nutritional therapy assessment. Look at their lab tests, look at blood chemistry assessment, look at ideally if they can afford a GI map, stool test, Dutch hormone panel, a wheat zoomer, really looking at zooming in on what's going on inside. So we're not just fit and healthy on the outside, we're fit and healthy from the inside out. And insulin resistance is an issue for a lot of athletes because of cortisol being constantly elevated from chronic exercise, chronic stress, the way we're living our life, and then chronic internal stressors as H. pylori. I've had every test this year. People are elevated H. pylori. That is a parasite in your gut wall lining. And so when you have overgrowth of H. pylori, which is always some, that's going to impact whole domino effect of issues downstream. So we always want to start north, work our way south, and figure out what's going on by testing and not guessing. So if you are struggling trying to figure out what's going on with you, I would save some money aside, stop going out for meals and coffee, and invest in a lab test and really know what's going on, because people are just causing more damage than good a lot of times, how they're working out, how they're eating, and look at all this. But metabolic flexibility is something I test with the Pinoe metabolic testing kit. So we can identify a lot of this information, tie that in with looking at your fasted blood glucose, your A1C, fasting insulin levels. Your HOMA-IR test will help us see peptide levels. C-peptide is a marker of insulin production by the pancreas. Triglycerides, your HDL levels, if they're too low, can be associated with insulin resistance. Your leptin levels, liver function test, inflammatory markers, your CRP, interleukin 6, those are associated with insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. So looking at the metabolic testing, when we test on Pinoe, we can identify what I'm going to do actually in the next hour, test somebody on their resting metabolism test. It's only a 10-minute test, but it's what I do with that data and collect clues from the nutritional therapy assessment to figure out what's going on. So metabolic flexibility is really important to test and identify, are you doing enough strength training? Are you eating the right foods for you? Are you doing enough movement? Do you need to do more interval training? So even from the resting metabolism test, we can figure out a little bit more data, what you might need to do more, especially if we see we are not efficient at burning fat versus carbohydrates as our main fuel source at rest. So exercise is an important part of metabolic flexibility. The effect is mediated by the impact of exercise on the mitochondria. This article back with Pinoe talks about current evidence that shows that exercise trains skeletal muscles, especially endurance athletes, present increased skeletal muscle mitochondrial biogenesis and have higher mitochondrial content, capacity, and function, which means exercise enhanced mitochondrial performance is related to better metabolic flexibility. In contrast, skeletal muscle for individuals with obesity and insulin resistance is metabolically inflexible compared with skeletal muscle of healthy individuals. So besides the physical activity, chronic calorie surplus, which I don't like to go by calories, I like to look at nutrient density, and is an important factor impairing mitochondrial function, including metabolic flexibility. So weight loss, or I rather look at fat loss, isn't just calories in, calories out, but just looking at metabolic flexibility. And to me, I'll add in, just looking at obesity related metabolic issues isn't just cutting your calories, it's getting nutrient dense whole foods. That's why you want to focus on getting rid of the empty calorie processed foods and the vegetable oils and the other toxic foods and focus on eating nutrient dense whole foods, because you will not be as hungry. You don't have the cravings when you are fat dependent on burning fat, and carbs are your backup fuel tank. But if you are eating the right foods, you won't need to snack. That's mindless eating versus mindful eating. You'll be full and satiated for hours if you focus on getting the right macros for your body. Some people do better with a higher protein and fat. Some people need a little more carbohydrates, but they're from nature. They're not man-made processed crap, right? So we want to look at your physical activity, the aerobic and strength training, and improve metabolic flexibility and your resting metabolism rate by having more lean tissue, by having more mitochondria and improving that fat burning engine, but also knowing to add in some sprint workouts in there and not to overconsume calories, and calories coming from highly processed empty calorie foods that promote weight gain and dysregulation of metabolic health. So it's the food, the calories you get too much of because you're eating empty calorie foods like chips and crackers and other foods that just don't make you feel full. You can't overeat a steak. You can't overeat. What else? I don't know. I can't overeat meat, but I can not digest it properly. So my issue is more similar to a lot of my clients, is that I need digest enzymes and HCl betaine to break my food down, or else it just sits there for hours and I don't break it down for 5 hours or more. So I know I need to take digest enzymes, but I do not want to take HCl betaine if I have elevated H. pylori, because that just makes them thrive and grow more if we add more acidity. So you have to really investigate, test, and not guess. So lastly, can breath analysis be utilized as an index of metabolic flexibility? So an article from Pinoe, metabolic flexibility as individuals alternate between the feeding and fasting can be assessed through changes in their respiratory exchange ratio, which we calculate from the volume of carbon dioxide to volume of oxygen. The ratio measured by breath analysis, RER, respiratory exchange ratio, is an index of the proportion of carbs to fat being oxidized for energy. So in humans, RER typically fluctuates between 0.7 and 1.0, depending on the fuel being utilized. When fat or glucose is the energy source, RER is 0.7 for fat or 1.0 for carbohydrates, glucose. In a fasted condition, typically RER is about 0.80 in subjects fed with mixed diets, while values lower than 0.75 are observed in individuals fed with low-carb diets, 30% or less of their calories coming from carbohydrates. Now, individuals with negative energy balance are fed high-fat diets, with 50% or more of their energy from fat tend to have even lower fasting RER levels. However, they say in a state of increased visceral fat, so central obesity and insulin resistance, there's higher preference of glucose relative to fat as an energy source in the fasting state. So we can identify this in the Pinoe metabolic testing, resting test. So we can see the metabolic flexibility. And an impaired drop in RER during overnight fast, A high fasting RER shows glucose oxidation predominance and the ability to switch to fat oxidation, as well as impaired rise in RER in the response of feeding with a baseline RER of 0.85, which fails to increase further. This indicates metabolically inflexible state. So several studies suggest that this is a case for obese insulin resistance in type 2 diabetic subjects. However, they say indirect calorimeter should be used with caution and critical thinking to measure metabolic flexibility. Someone should always consider subject's energy balance and macro composition while interpreting results, since those factors affect RER. In summary, the article says metabolic flexibility is not a valid term regarding not only a valid term regarding metabolic health, still it may actually underlying epidemic changes in metabolic disease that affect our demographic groups and burden healthcare systems. It may also be an early condition if timely detected and appropriately handled could prevent the onset of serious metabolic disturbances such as type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And I would add, this is why you need to test, not test, because the way our medical system works and our insurance, you're getting blood chemistry panel that's like half of what you really want to look at once a year covered by insurance. If I want to know more and be preventative and be a health optimizer and focus on fueling and training and my lifestyle performance habits to improve my future self, well, then I need to take my health in my own hands and do my own lab testing as with a coach and get it interpreted right in functional ranges and look at something as Ulta Labs where I can order insulin, I can order a full thyroid panel and get all these comprehensive labs that we want to look at so we get the right information instead of waiting until we have insulin resistance. Doing the PNOE metabolic test at rest and during exercise, getting all these markers we need, collect that data, and then create a personalized program for you based on your nutrition, balancing your blood sugar, testing and not guessing that as well, managing your stress, working on your sleep, addressing your gut health and inflammation, testing your gut because you have no idea what's actually going on. You're just guessing if you don't spend the money to do it. So save up money and do it. It's totally worth it. Detoxification. A lot of people have congested liver and dysfunction in their phase 1 and 2 and 3 drainage pathways, 3 liver detox pathways. So we want to personalize all of this and not guess. So if you want to read the rest of all this stuff I put into a blog, it's super long. I just got down a rabbit hole of insulin resistance, metabolic flexibility, and flexibility. So you can check it out, debbiepotts.net. Are you metabolically flexible or inflexible? So check it out and let me know what your questions are. We'll go into a little bit more in the next few episodes. So thanks for listening. Chat soon. Hey, before you go, do you know the importance of having organ meat? I won't eat organ meat, but I have a solution. Paleo Valley has a grass-fed organ complex that I can take each day and not gross out as I would if I was eating real liver and organ meat. So check out Paleo Valley store-fed organ complex. The ideal way to get all this nutrient-dense food without having to eat and cook even the organ meat. Ugh. But it's from 100% grass-fed sources, and you get excellent source of all your vitamins as A, B2, B3, B5, B9, all of that, as well as phosphorus, zinc, copper, selenium, B12, folate, iron. There's so much nutrients in this. So this is why I started taking Paleo Valley grass-fed organ complex. So check it out, paleovalley.com, and use our discount code lowcarbathlete. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us continue and grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and see you next time.